So the word is now printed on the card. Let's make the word, however, look a bit nicer. So it's looking a bit simple at the moment, just printed up in the top corner. So the first thing is, if we rotate the card around, we can see that the Chinese word is actually printed back to front. So we want to obviously fix that, and that is easy done. We can jump into card 2, and we just want to rotate the text back around 180 degrees. So to do that, we'll rotate the text in a transform. Here we have the transform property, and we use the matrix 4 class, and we can then access rotation Y. And we want to rotate this around 180 degrees, so we'll pass in pi. So that'll rotate it around 180 degrees, effectively flip it around. Alright, cool, so that's now the right way around, but the alignment's off. So let's use the alignment property and set that to center. Okay. Alright, so now this is consistent with card 1. Now let's look at the actual card and make that look a bit nicer. So what would look quite good, I think, is some rounded corners on the card. So in box decoration, we'll select border radius and use the border radius class and select the circular constructor, and now we want to pass in the radius. Now rather than writing in the value directly here, I will create a const, and that way we can have all of the edges rounded by the same amount to give a consistent look. So let's jump to constants, and here we'll create a new const of type double, prefix that with k to indicate a const, and we'll name this circular border radius, and we'll set that at 30. And then here we can write circular border radius, update. Cool, so we have rounded corners. Now while we're at it, let's look at the grid tiles in the home page. So we'll do that really quickly. Here we have the border radius, which is 30 anyway, but we'll update that with that const value. So therefore, if we want to update, we've just got one place to update it, and we'll update it here as well. Cool, so that's done. Alright, now back to card 2. The second thing I'd like to do is we can add a border around, a white border around the card. So that could also make it look a bit nicer. So to do that, we'll use the border property, border.all, and here we have a bunch of ways to customize the border. So the first thing is we'll set the color, set that to white. Cool, so we have a white border, and let's make that a bit thicker. So we'll set the width to say 5, and just to be a little bit pedantic here, I'm going to create another const that's going to be called card border width, and that's just because we have 2 cards. Copy this here, jump back to our constant, okay, let's jump back to card 2. Cool, so now let's see how that looks. So that can be customized to whatever style that you're trying to achieve, but at the moment I think that pretty much fits the theme that we're trying to achieve in this app. Okay, and now we've done that, we want to apply the same thing to card 1. So we can just copy this here, go to card 1, paste this in, import, do a hot restart, jump back in. Okay, so we have card 1 that has the same look. So now let's fix up the layout of the card. So what we will do is have an image up the top of the card and then the English word down the bottom. So here I've collected a bunch of PNG images which match each of the words in our list of words, so all of the data. So the important thing is the spelling matches each of those words, and also the file size is not too big, so these are around 200 KB, just to balance the quality with not impacting the app. So copy and paste in all the images to the app. So paste these in. Now here on the text, we want the image to be above the text, so I'm going to wrap the text in a column, which will stack the widgets on top of each other vertically. So here we'll use image.asset and then again put in the path. And we need the name, so notifier.word1, because we're in card 1, so using notifier.english, because we need to access the English property, and then .png here. So here we have the image class, and we have the full path name, and we're getting the English name from notifier, which is the same as the text that's being produced. Now we'll wrap these in an expanded, so they fill up all the available space and divide that equally among themselves. Now the image isn't loading, so I find if it isn't, just run a full restart and that should fix the problem. So here I'll press the green arrow and restart the app. So the app has restarted, so let's jump back in. And here we can see the image now shows, so that is working. But we do have one small issue, and when the page loads, just for a split second, while we generate a new word and provider notifies the widget that we have a new word, just for a split second, this path will be blank. So we need to get around that. So there's a couple of ways to do that. One is we could write a method that detects when we do have a full path, and when we do, only at that point in time, we run the image widget. But another way to go around this, which is a bit of a quick fix, is we can just load a default image that'll show, and that default image will show so quickly we'll actually never notice it. So in the images, I've just created a default image, pasted in a default image, which is this very basic arrow here. So it doesn't really matter. And then if we go to Flashcards notifier for word 1, we can write in loading arrow, which was the name of that image. So for the very split second when the session loads, it's going to load the arrow until we've actually generated a new word. But again, it's going to be so fast that we won't actually notice this arrow loading, but it's just going to prevent this error running. So a bit of a quick fix, but it does the job. Okay, so now that we will prevent the error, the next thing is let's get the layout looking a bit better. So first of all, we'll go back to card 1 and let's look at the text first. So the text is looking a little bit sad, it's a bit small. So let's stylize this text. So we'll do that in our text theme. If we go to our themes, and here in our themes we have a text theme, which is our default text. Let's update the headline text, so headline 1. Copy this, we'll paste this in. And we want to keep the color white. Let's update the size to say 58. We'll keep the same font family, and let's increase the font weight. So we can write font weight dot bold. Now back in card 1, we can apply that. So style, theme of, text theme, and now we can select the theme we want, headline 1. Let's do a hot restart. We need to do that to apply the updated theme. Jump back in, and here we have no error, so that solved that problem. And we can see the text looks a lot better now. Okay, so now before we go any further, what is a good idea is we can refactor out this code into its own stateless widget, and that way we can just reapply all of this logic on card 1 and card 2 easily. So rather than reformatting it on card 1 and card 2, we've just got all of this display logic in one place. So I'm going to refactor, extract Flutter widget, and I'll name this card display. Cut this here. In our components, we can create another Dart file, card display, paste this in, import material. Okay, so now we want this card display to update depending on whether we're on card 1 or depending whether this is card 2. So we can pass that information into the stateless widget, and then we'll create a bool which will determine whether this is card 1 or card 2. So we'll write is card 1, and then up here we'll write required this dot is card 1. So the purpose of this bool is to determine whether the display should reflect card 1 or card 2. So we can use this as a condition here, is card 1. If it is, we'll return this column. If not, we'll also return a column. I'm just going to copy all of this here. And we need consumer because we need to be able to read word 1 and word 2. So we'll wrap with a widget, and we'll wrap this with a consumer. So flashcards notifier, and then here we'll have a builder. And import the provider library. And I'm going to cut out this information here. So we'll just have card 2 empty at the moment. And next up, I want to put some padding around the image. So we will wrap this in some padding, and we'll say this is 18. And back here, just in card display, import the library, and is card 1, we'll set that to true. Okay, so that's in card 1. So jumping back to card display, we've updated the padding, so there's some padding around the image, and I want the image to take up proportionally more of the card. So we'll use the flex property, and we'll set that at say 2. Cool, so that image now takes up a lot more space. And now because we'll have an image on card 1 and card 2, rather than writing this code out and pasting it again, I'm just going to refactor this out. And this time we can just refactor this out as a method. So there's not much logic, so we'll just throw it in a method, and we'll write build image. Okay, so this builds the image, and I'm going to update the argument. So it's of type string, and we'll write image, and then here we'll pass in image. So we can update this depending on whether it is word 1 or word 2. And then up here we'll write in notifier dot word 1 dot English. So therefore we can pass in whether this is word 1 or word 2. Pass this in, and then that'll display that word. Okay, so we have build image. Let's also look at the text. Now before I refactor this out, we do have the risk that we get a long word and therefore the text goes out of bounds. So to get around that problem, we can wrap this with a fitted box. And by default, that fitted box will contain that word within the available space. Now we can't actually put a fitted box inside an expanded. So to get around that, we'll wrap the fitted box in a size box. So by doing it this way, we're just avoiding any problems with the sizing of the widgets. And in here, we need to put a size in, and we want to make this as big as possible. So for the width, I will write double dot infinity, which is going to be as big as possible. And for the height, we can just do the same. Okay, cool. So we've jigged around a little bit, but now this is going to be a lot easier to apply to card 2. And also later on, we want to flip around. So card 1 might display the Chinese first or whatever other language is being used, and the English will be second. So therefore we can just configure all of that in our card display widget. So now let's lay out on card 2. So here we have the text. We'll remove this column here and instead write in card display. Import the library. Is card 1, and here it's false. Update that and we should get nothing. Add in a bracket here. Control Alt L. Format that. So let's update that. Okay, so we have a blank card. So let's go into card display. So here we've got this ternary operator. So therefore, if this bool is the value of true, we will run whatever is immediately after the question mark. So this logic here, the column. If this is false, we'll then return what's ever after this colon here. So this column here. And at the moment that's blank. So what we want to do is, in this case, we'll build an image again. So build image, and we'll pass in notifier word2 this time, dot English, because it'll always be the English for the image. Then after it, let's create a text box, and instead of the English, we want the Chinese character, and then after the Chinese character, we want the pinyin. Hot reload. Okay, cool. So there we go. That's showed up and looks good. Now I also want to put some padding all around the display. So at the very top, I'll wrap some padding. That just brings everything in a little bit. And another tweak I want to make for the text box is I want to adjust the flex value that we pass in. So for the pinyin, I want to make this slightly smaller. So we'll have a flex value, and we can create int. We'll name this flex. So another required argument. So we'll pass that in there. So here for the Hanzi, we'll put that in as 2. And this will be for the pinyin. We'll put this in as 1. And for the English, we'll put this in here as 1. And because we've increased the value here to 2, we'll set our image as 4. So it's just proportionally larger. Do a hot reload. Okay, so here we have the Chinese characters a little bit more prominent, and the pinyin is just a bit smaller. Okay, so I think the UI is pretty much where we want it to be. Now before we run this, I should update word 1 to word 2 here. So this is for card 2, so when we flip it over. And also in the flashcards notifier, update word 2 so we have a default image that appears. Okay, now let's run this and see how it looks. Okay, it comes in. Okay, cool. Now I do want to add a little bit of control with the slide and animation, just so we can have a slight delay when the slide animation comes in, and also make that just a little bit slower. So let's go to slide animation, and I'm going to create 2 additional variables to give us just a bit more control. The first one will be of type int, so they'll both be of type int. And I'll name this animation duration, and also one more variable. I'll name this animation delay. Pass these in up here. So animation duration. So this is the duration of the animation, and we'll set this to a default value, and we'll set it to the const as our default value. So if we don't pass anything in here, this will automatically be sent to that const value. And then down here, we'll write widget dot animation duration and remove the const keyword here. So therefore, if we don't pass in a value, it's just going to be set to the const value. But if we do pass in a value, we can update that to something longer or shorter. And for the second variable, we'll create a way to apply a small delay to the animation. So up here, I'll write this dot animation delay, and our default value will be 0. So by default, we'll have no delay. Now we need to update here. Now I'm going to remove the controller here in the init state. So we already have it in did update widget. And down here we can write if widget dot animation delay is greater than 0. So therefore a value must have been passed in. Else animation will run forward. So it will run normally if it's just 0, but if the number is greater than 0, then we'll have a delay before the animation runs. So inside future.delay, write duration, milliseconds, and the time will be the amount that we passed in, widget.animation delay. And then this function will run after that period of time. So cut this here, paste that in here. And to prevent a potential error, I'll write if mounted before this runs. So to make sure that this widget is still in the widget tree. So therefore, we'll just put if mounted here. So that'll prevent any potential error. Okay, cool. So now we have the option to pass in a different duration and also a delay if we want to. So let's go to card 1. So here in the slide animation, so this is a slide animation when it slides up, we can now customize the duration and the delay. So we'll pass in a duration and we'll increase this. So the default is that const value, which is 600. Let's increase that to 1 second, so 1000 milliseconds. And let's apply a very small delay, let's say 200 milliseconds. So by doing this, we'll see the card slide in more clearly when the session starts. And that also gives that image just a quick moment to appear on the card if there's any slight delay. Okay, so now let's run this and see how it looks. We'll do a hot restart. Okay, cool. So the slide animation is looking really good and smooth, and the UI is coming together. Let's take this one step further, and we'll add in an icon, an audio icon, that can play text to speech. So therefore, we can tap that icon, and it will read out the Chinese word, or any language that you want. So we'll do that next.